why does nobody want the Red Sox job? Why can't they having such a hard time finding someone to take this job? It seems like a pretty good job. They're going to spend money. They have the fan base. They have Fenway Park. But why do they have such a hard time filling this job?
AJ, I wouldn't say that nobody wants it. Different people have different circumstances, and in the case of James Click and John Daniels, apparently they did not want to go and interview for family reasons. They just did not want to relocate, whatever the case might be. So, yes, it's an attractive job in many ways. However, every executive out there is aware that the Red Sox run through GMs like nothing else. They've had three in the last, I think, 12 years or 14 years, and two of them won World Series. And yet they were gone pretty soon after that. The other one was Chaim Bloom. He went to the ALCS in 2021, didn't last 2 years after that. So that's one thing. The other thing is you take the Red Sox job, you're inheriting a manager, Alex Cora, who clearly has power in the organization, who has actually spoken of having aspirations of becoming a GM, though not at this particular time. That's one thing. You're also inheriting some people in the front office who have been there quite a while. High level people, assistant GMs, all well thought of, but they're not your own if you're coming in as the new president of baseball operations. And I'm not saying it was a problem for Chaim Bloom, but when you take one of these jobs, you want some control over who you have on your staff. And with the Red Sox, you're kind of having to accept a number of different people. So it's all those things combined. The trepidation that would seem to me to be the most valid would be the way they run through people. And that's obvious. It's on the record. It's clearly apparent to everyone in the game. That ownership is fickle. They are reactionary to what's going on with the public. If the fans get uneasy, the ownership reacts, and it's not necessarily a healthy place for a president of baseball operations to be in.
I have a lot of thoughts here, and it turns into questions. So, one, I'm thinking actually about recent past with the Mets. The Mets were having trouble initially figuring out their front office situation, and it ended up turning into Billy Epler, which now I think they've got their guy that they had their eye on for a long time. So I'm thinking that if the Red Sox want someone that's already got experience in the pedigree, they're probably going to have to overpay, because you have to assume you might not make it through the contract or something like that, right? Or they're, you might not have a job in that position for a couple of years. The main thing I wanted to ask you about that stood out to me, Alex Cora. We speak a lot about how the manager role has changed nowadays. I just find it fascinating, yes, that a team's going to keep a lot of their front office intact, and that already would piss someone off if they're coming in that they don't have say. But then the manager, almost every manager in baseball, correct me if I'm wrong, has definitely less say, less power, and has to really work hand in hand with the president of baseball ops or GM, whatever it is. So doesn't this almost seem old school, where it's like, well, you have to deal with our manager, okay? He might call some shots that you don't want to call. That's not how this works anymore, does it?
In most cases, no. And Alex Cora is an accomplished manager. He's won a World Series and he's done some really good things. They've had some down years too, but I don't know that we can blame him for those down years. It is an unusual situation, Scott, the way you described it in today's environment. Does that mean that a president of baseball operations wouldn't want Alex Cora as his manager? No, it doesn't mean that. And this would not be the first head of baseball operations to inherit a manager. Happens all the time. But at the same time, it might give someone pause. It might. And I don't know how people approach these things. I'm not someone who's ever been in that position, nor do I aspire to be in that position. But if I were going in, I'd say, hey, where are we with Alex? Do I have to keep Alex for the duration of his contract? Can we maybe do some things differently? Can I have more say than perhaps Chaim Bloom had, although Chaim Bloom's had plenty of say? However the dynamic works and however you want it to work, you need to express that if you're incoming. And that is something that is going to have to be addressed, I'm sure, in all of the interviews. It's not that Alex Cora is a negative. It would be difficult for anyone to say that, but it's an interesting way that they have gone about it and an interesting dynamic, as I said, for a new president of baseball operations to deal with.